How are you?
Good, Julie. How are you?
I'm very well. Well, you're our next victim.
Ha.
Welcome to our Get to Know the Local Union Presidents. Matt, so I want to start with you. What area does the Pearson Teachers Union cover?
That's a good question. So we cover two main areas, I guess, the western half of the island of Montreal, so from Verdun, LaSalle, Lachine over to St. Anne de Bellevue, and then the off-island west of that all the way to the Ontario border, so Ile-Perrot, Paincourt, Hudson, St. Lazare, and further west right to the Ontario border, actually. So geographically, that's about that.
Yeah, it's quite a big size, really, when you look at it that way.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I sat down and figured out, like I think of ourselves as one of the smaller geographic unions, at least compared to some of our sister unions in the rest of the province. But when you actually get to driving it, sometimes certainly traffic is never our friend when back in the good old days when we used to visit schools.
And how many members does the Pearson Teachers Union have,
So we
approximately?
we represent about 1,800 teachers
Okay,
altogether, roughly. Yeah, always changing a little bit because of leaves and intake, but certainly ballpark 1,800 teachers across 60 schools and centers.
okay,
Mhm.
excellent. And Matt, if you can share with us a little bit, what was your journey to becoming the local union president of the Pearson Teachers Union?
Sure. It's kind of funny, we always live life forward, but then always look at it backwards. So I'm kind of like thinking about that. I guess my journey started when I remember when I got my E1 contract. So when I worked a couple of years at Burling, doing replacement contracts at the start of my career. I didn't really think about the union at all. I had no idea about it, how anything worked. I was one of those young, naive teachers who just kind of trusted that everything would work out. So I went through the priority pool process without even understanding how it worked. So I got my E1. I was very fortunate for that to happen. And I remember getting to my new school in Beaconsfield High. And in my first couple of days, they were very welcoming there. The science department where I was working had a desk laid out for me. There was kind of a party to welcome. There's myself and another colleague. We were new to the school, and
Wow.
yeah, it was fun. It was great group there. But I the reason I bring that up is I remember like we shared an office. The science department shared an office with the art department, and because we were in the same wing of the building. And I just remember in those first, I don't know, a few months, as a new teacher still trying to figure out, running around, chicken with my head cut off, running from classroom to classroom, prepping my lessons, doing my corrections. I always remember teachers coming in because the art teacher there was the union delegate. So teachers would come in and ask questions, and I would just kind of keep an ear out and kind of notice like, oh yeah, okay, that is a good thing to know. Like I didn't even know like I have sick days, really? Okay, cool. And the main questions people would come and ask about, like special leave days were a big question. Oh yeah, there's a day for this, there's a day for that. Just slowly over time, I would kind of listen in on that. So eventually, like as things always are, union delegates are always looking for help, and they're always looking for other people to join them. So our senior union delegate at the school retired, so this delegate asked me like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing that?" And that kind of jump started me. Anyway, that art teacher is now it's Heidi Yetman, the president of QPAT. So she kind of dragged me into this. I wouldn't say kicking and screaming, but certainly I was very reluctant at first. I was not really a union guy. I kind of thought, just tell me what the rules are and I'll do my thing. But just over time, it was interesting kind of listening to the questions that teachers had, that they would come. A lot of the questions were simple, like, hey, I'm getting married. How many days do I get for this? But sometimes the questions were a bit more complicated and a bit more. Um, I saw how quickly the issues that the union deal with are so interconnected with relationships, like how conflict gets worked out in schools and how school council operates, like and how all those things play out. So, fast forward a few years, and now I'm at McDonald High, and Heidi gives me a call again, and they're looking for a treasurer. Our treasurer had resigned on the union executive, so she asked me if I was interested, and I'm a math guy. I can look at numbers, and so I joined the executive, and that was a different perspective because now it was looking kind of at the union from the top level, kind of looking at how big picture issues get solved with the school board. And then I guess the last step was when Heidi decided to run for the QPAT presidency. Like she first told me just before the Christmas holidays, and I didn't think anything of it. other than, oh, great, like Heidi's leaving, great for QPAT, bad for us. But I didn't even consider running or anything like that until the actual call for nominations came out. I think it was in late February. And I remember going out to dinner with my wife, and we were just talking about some people that put their names forward. And we did, as I always do, I do a pros and cons list. So I listed all the pros and all the cons, like what would work, what wouldn't, what would I like, and all those things. And then at the end of the meal, my wife was just like, forget this list. Like, do you want to do this? And I just thought, yeah, like, let's throw my name in the hat and see what happens. And then here I am. So I remember that getting that call. I was in the prep room, getting ready for a class, and I got that call, and I was like, all right, let's do this. So it was kind of, looking back on that, it's kind of a series of just the next step, like always starting, from simple questions to just seeing bigger. The issues get bigger, but certainly at the end of the day, it's all about getting answers to teachers so that teachers can continue to do the work that they need to do and get the support that they need along the way.
Absolutely. What you're saying is something I think a lot of people have a hesitancy to become even the union delegate because they see it as a really big responsibility. And I think it's indeed a big job because, especially if you're in a bigger school, it certainly can be. But again, you don't have to have all the answers. No. I think it takes them a while to figure that part out. You don't have to have all the answers. You're just there almost in support, and you can call the union with your fellow teachers or whatever.
And it's something I found too, that like even coming to work in the union office here, we don't have all the answers either. Like nobody's memorized the collective agreement, and sometimes the scenarios that come up are things that haven't been dealt with either recently or soon. So one of the most important lessons I had to learn early on was just that saying I don't know is okay. Like I'm used to being, you teach teenagers, you teach students, and you hopefully are the smartest person in the room. And very quickly in this job, you realize you're not the smartest person in the room, but you hopefully are surrounding yourself with people who also know the answers. Being able to reach out to you and the other professionals at QPAT, to work with my team here, who definitely has years of experience to rely on it. And it's okay to not know right away. And that's something that I think all teachers can benefit from. Is we're used to being the masters in our classroom, but we're surrounded by a wealth of experience from our colleagues, and asking questions. It's never a bad thing to ask a question. I don't know is okay, as long as you do that follow-up afterwards to get the answer that you need.
Absolutely. And I think what makes a staff strong, in my experience when I was a teacher as well, is it's the collective, what everybody brings to the table. It's not because you have one amazing teacher who knows everything. It's the opposite. It's when everybody can work together and bring their strengths. That's what makes for a strong staff. So
yeah, and sharing that wealth of knowledge is so critical too, is that, because as soon as it's, and that's something I noticed here, like when Heidi jumped over to QPAT, like that experience went with her. So it's so important to share that knowledge around. And in the same way in schools too, to have as many people as possible asking questions and getting the right information, so that when the question comes up again, they're equipped to answer it.
Absolutely. And now I want to ask you, it's sometimes a difficult question to answer, but what is one or maybe a few things that you wish that more teachers knew about the union?
I think one thing is that one thing I always find when teachers call is that they often start off with, hi, I'm really sorry to bother you, but, and it's not a bother. Like, please don't apologize for calling us. I know some teachers really feel they're worried when they call to ask questions, or they're worried about, how it will look. Like, honestly, we tell our students this all the time. There's no such thing as a bad question. So it's the same thing we have to give ourselves the same grace too, as teachers and as union workers, that there are times where asking questions is good, and it's good to just check to make sure that the understanding is correct. So whether it be calling us at the union office, whether it be asking a delegate, asking a colleague, always ask a question. I think that's really important for us, because we're so used to, as I said before, like being in our classroom, we're the experts, the students are relying on us, but it's okay to just reach out and get the support, get the answers that are needed. The other thing that I think is important to know about the union is that, it's a bit cliche to say it, but, the union is all of us working together, and that we kind of are there to support each other. Like I have obviously a very different role than most of the other teachers in our board, but at the end of the day, I'm just an elected teacher. Like I don't have any
Mhm.
special magic powers that were bestowed on me by, the union powers that be. Like I'm just some guy reading the collective agreement too. So it's important to kind of know that yes, we have the experience, and yes, we have the developed expertise over time, but there's also that we're not, there's no mystique here, there's no secret formula. And honestly, most of the time, we just want to hear and support teachers and help come alongside them in their struggles in their classroom, and help support them with, whether it be at the school level, whether it be at the board level, to just make sure that they are equipped with the tools they need to do the job and to get the answers they deserve.
Absolutely. And in my opinion, it's when we stop asking questions, that's when we're in
Mm.
trouble. If we're still taking the time to ask them, it's a good sign. So
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah. And things are ever changing. So you have to keep asking, because sometimes what the answer was a few years back, you might get a different answer now, So
Well, and certainly with the pandemic, I think the pandemic has certainly taught us that the answers are never the same, even week to week. So always
that's
ask,
absolutely
always
true.
ask.
And you're helping me go into the next question. Speaking of the pandemic, so more you personally,
Mm.
looking at the past 18 months, something that you have picked up that you want to maintain in your life,
Mm.
and something that maybe you dropped because of the pandemic, and that you're happy to say, hey, you know what, I don't need that in my life anymore.
Huh. I think the one lesson I don't want to say I've learned it, because and my wife still reminds me of this often, is the importance to just let yourself check out. Like it's not just the checking out at the end of the day. Like, you get home, you're making dinner, I've got a 2-year-old at home, so I get to run around with him. Um, so like, but allowing yourself to have that time, like there's always something else to do. And this is something I
Mm.
remember as a teacher in the classroom. There's always the next set of labs to mark, next set of assignments, the next prep. Like the work is never done. Even
Mm-hmm.
June 30th, you give yourself a couple of weeks to relax, and you're already thinking ahead to next year. So one of the things I've learned, or I'm still working through, is at the end of the day, just giving myself permission to unplug for a few hours and just not think about all these things, all these announcements from the ministry, or the problems that still exist, but just giving ourselves time to unwind and maybe check out at night and watch some silly TV and not think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know, my wife's a teacher as well, and she's an English teacher, so she has to mark essays. So just watching her, you know, plow through it one at a time. But same thing is just allowing ourselves the time to just disconnect once in a while, and because it makes our work, it makes our teaching better. One
Mm-hmm.
thing, on the flip side of it, is there something that I've let go that I hope to never pick up again? Oof. I mean, so much about the pandemic, I think, is I think if there's one thing that I've learned to let go of, is taking things personally.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I can. Like there are some things with the pandemic that I wish I could change, but I know that I can't. I can't, you know, perhaps a bit better now, but in the thick of, I think of March to May 2020, when we had no idea what was coming next. I think of that, back to that first week. Are we going to continue to be paid? Like those kind of base level questions where we really had no sense of which direction this was going to be going, and just let go of the things that we can't control and focus on the things that we can, because
Mm-hmm.
so much of teaching, like we can't fix every student. We can't, they come to us with their own challenges and struggles, and it's important for us to meet them where they are, and just bring them along through their path, but without fixing their lives. Like we that's not our role. Our role is to educate. Our role is to equip them to open their eyes to the world around them. And I think we have to give ourselves the grace as teachers and as union workers to focus on the problems we can fix, and then don't let the other ones affect us personally. And that's, like I said, that's a lesson I'm learning still, that it's still, in the thick of it, as the pandemic really extends into, coming up on 2 years of this. I know Minister Dubé talks about, living with COVID. Like, what does that mean? And I think what I'm seeing more is at the local level is just hearing from teachers who are just exhausted, and not just exhausted in the crisis sense, but just in the long term. We we talked a lot about throughout, as vaccination was unfolding, that this is the light at the end of the tunnel, but then here we are still in the tunnel. And I think it's important for us to, as teachers, just give ourselves the grace to find ways. We're just one day at a time, and plug a way through it, because while at the same time for us at the union, it's important to keep in mind and keep very centrally focused the stress that teachers are under, because that's why we're here to support teachers, is to hear what they need and advocate for them at the board or at the provincial level. So I think kind of marrying those two things together, like keeping a close eye on the reality, but not taking it too personally that the work just becomes overwhelming.
That's great. Sounds like you have a very smart wife as well, by the way.
My wife is way smarter than me. So yes, definitely.
And finally, maybe as we make our way, I mean, we're still in the tunnel, like you say, but some advice for teachers so that they keep going along during this time.
I think the one piece of advice is be gracious with yourself. I think, I know for myself personally, I'm my own critic, and my own worst enemy sometimes. I don't need somebody to tell me when I've screwed up. I've already told myself 10 times. And I think a lot of teachers are that way, that we know, we had that, you give a lesson and it falls flat and you're just like, oof. But it's just about giving yourself the grace to pick it up and try it again tomorrow. The kids, I found with my students, I mean, there's always those students who are just going to push your buttons no matter what you do, but most students are forgiving, and most students understand that this is all a process we're going through together. And I think if we give ourselves the grace to, keep trying and keep innovating and keep, pushing the envelope forward, so for the benefit of our students, I think, the system will prosper and the system will flourish because of us. And I think we just have to be willing to forgive ourselves when it doesn't always work, and that's okay. And it's just about, we're not all experts, and even we've been doing this for a while and I still don't know half of what I'm doing. So it's just a matter of, trying something, and if it works, great, we'll keep doing that. And if it doesn't work, try something different. And I think we can apply that to almost anything.
And what a beautiful that example is when teachers do that for their students as well. So absolutely.
Yeah, so like we do it for students all the time. We just have to remember to do it for ourselves too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Matt.
Oh, pleasure, Julie. Anytime.